So this is the first episode of Transportation Talks with Julian Barba and
Matt Redmond.
I guess today we're going to do an inaugural episode, kind of giving a background history of what our career has been like and why we decided to go and start something called Transportation Talks. I have about 8 years of experience in the transportation and traffic industry, and really wanted to dive into an industry that would impact not only civilization but be somewhat innovative as it is with autonomous vehicles.
Yeah.
How about yourself, Matt?
Yeah, I think transportation's fascinating, and it's a huge problem to solve. And I'm very excited to be in the industry. I have about 4 years of experience and working at a current consulting firm.
Awesome. So the topic that we wanted to dive in today was, which is fairly recent, was the iPhone 7 and its upgrades and how it truly impacts the transportation industry.
So with a wireless technology like Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, you have this hexadecimal code called a MAC address, and that will only tell you, I looked into this a little bit, and it will only tell you the device, the type of device it came from. Like It could tell, it's an iPhone, or it could tell, it's a LG, device, but it doesn't tell you anything more. There's no personal information there.
Gotcha.
It's just this unique identifier to that device, right?
Okay.
It's pretty electrical engineering based, really.
Okay.
So that device, it broadcasts, and you can do the same for Wi-Fi, but it's just not as direct. You can get a closer range on the Bluetooth, so it allows for more accuracy on.
So it looks like with the new release of the iPhone 7 and its updates, it looks like they're improving the Bluetooth technology. And to give a background history of that, transportation companies actually have a Bluetooth reader, and how it reads MAC addresses. Matt is actually going to discuss that.
Yeah, so that new sensor, essentially, this W1 chip that they put in this iPhone 7,
Gotcha.
It's going to connect to those little earbuds and through wireless technology, which from what I could tell is still a Bluetooth communication. It's just based on more proprietary Apple stuff rather than a generic Bluetooth.
Gotcha.
So it's going to allow for some pretty slick communication between those earbuds. And as you may have heard, that Beats was acquired by Apple, and Beats has been pushing the nice, fancy, big Bluetooth headsets. So a lot of this wireless communication can be picked up by some Bluetooth readers, as you mentioned. So these Bluetooth readers can be in a traffic cabinet along the side of an arterial road or along the side of a highway. And if you can get 2 or more stations, you can pick up travel times. So you can calculate these essentially devices, these MAC addresses with each device, and you can put a timestamp to it, and then farther downstream of that station, you can capture it again, and that time difference, you can get an actual travel time. So if you ever see those signs on the 405, maybe LAX, 15, maybe more like 45 minutes away.
Yeah, so that's essentially how it measures it, because
right.
Keep in mind, velocity is measured as distance over time, right?
Right.
So it takes that distance and divides it over the time that it took to track that MAC address for a second time.
Exactly. So the more devices or iPhones or really any device broadcasting this Bluetooth frequency, the more accurate you can get that travel time. But you only need maybe less than 5% of the traffic to get an accurate reading. So you can get a small actual number, and you can do pretty well in your travel time estimates.
Okay. So with that being said, I know you and I have discussed offline how Apple has infamously changed their MAC addresses for the devices because they realized that there were companies out there tracking the unique MAC address.
Yeah.
So let's dabble a little more about that.
Yeah, essentially Apple will rotate this unique MAC address. So they'll make it a virtual MAC address essentially, and they'll change it. So every about hour or so, they'll rotate that address so you can't track it for more than an hour. So this limits these kind of studies. Now, if your stations are closer together, it's unlikely that it's going to change. But if you have longer stations and you're trying to track a vehicle anonymously, again, you can only, it's just a unique MAC address which isn't actually tied to the person's phone number or anything like that. But if you're tracking it over a long distance, it would be hard to actually keep the device tracked because of the changing of the MAC address that Apple performs. So I think this W1 chip might play into that. It might be able to rotate differently. We'll have to see when people actually have the device and how that Bluetooth W1 chip works. But in general, it can still be done. It just makes it a little bit more difficult.
How does this Bluetooth technology affect pedestrian data, vehicle data, and bicycle data as well, right?
Yeah.
And how do firms, transportation firms or public agencies or some other form of stakeholder utilize that information?
Right. So, I mean, with the traffic case on the highways and arterials, it can definitely be implemented, and it has been. But we're also seeing some interesting cases indoors, inside malls and airports, where they can track pedestrian movements with little Bluetooth readers that capture the Bluetooth MAC address from a person's device, and they can determine, TSA wait times or just different movements through an airport or mall. So that can be interesting data for the planners of that airport or mall, or for the retail stores at a mall. So with more, connectivity wirelessly, you're going to have a higher concentration of these data points. So you're going to be able to probe more data points there. So that could be really interesting for the pedestrian case.
So diving a little deeper into the pedestrian case, let's say, for example, for the airport, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty good example. So as most people realize, most people that have traveled to airports in the last 10 years, you'll see that there's billboards in the middle of these terminals, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the rate at which companies like Clear Channel, whoever owns those billboards, charge on a monthly or daily or weekly basis for those billboards, it's based on sets of eyes or foot traffic. Right? So the higher the foot traffic, the more they can charge for having a certain billboard there, regardless of the product. So those are the type of companies that would be able to utilize that traffic, pedestrian traffic information. Right. Companies like Clear Channel, real estate companies as well, for like outdoor shopping areas like Third Street Promenade in Santa Monica. They would essentially be able to sell that data to potential tenants, right?
Right, exactly.
Or also marketing companies.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting case. You're kind of putting the data behind those billboards, where before it was more of a guesstimate.
Exactly. So you're justifying the price of this billboard, or justifying the price per square foot of a certain retail shop,
right? Based
on
the
foot traffic and sets of eyes,
right? Which is then boiled down to the number of devices essentially walking by with their wireless on. But you can scale that up now, because you can say, well, look, we capture this much percentage of traffic wirelessly.
Okay.
So you can essentially get a better estimate on the number.
Okay.
Yeah, and then like going to the airport, you always say, an hour for international or domestic flights, and 2 hours for international flights, right? To get there before, and imagine if it says, well, the wait time right now is 30 minutes, and that could allow you to plan a little bit better because they know the actual wait time of that TSA line.
Gotcha.
So there could be some interesting cases there.
Start calculating level of service, and saturation, flow rate,
speed of the line.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I know some people might look at Bluetooth readers as somewhat invasive,
right,
into their personal property.
Yeah, and that's a good concern. That's a legit concern.
So it's not George Orwell's 1984. This isn't Big Brother trying to track people,
right,
to find out, what they're doing.
Where
in personal
exactly
lives,
they are.
right?
Yeah.
So they're not really getting access into their personal data on their phone. All they're really doing is each phone or each device has a unique ID number. And all they're doing is tracking the distance and the time between those two. So this isn't the NSA searching through your phone for
and the fact that
reasons.
Apple rotates it, it actually helps your privacy a little bit. Because imagine if you had the same MAC address for the whole life of your phone, and you go into a mall, and then you go the next day into an airport, they would know that that's the same person or same device, which could be assigned to the same person.
Gotcha.
So, or now if Apple's changing it every hour or so, then they don't really know if that's the same person or not.
Gotcha.
So it can help with privacy to rotate it, but it still allows for studies to be done because it only rotates every hour. So you can do kind of studies with small time frames.
Okay. All right. That's a great summary, Matt.
So what do you want to do on the next episode, Julian?
I think might be best to just talk about Uber's self-driving cars. It looks like they're starting to roll out their cars out in the city of Pittsburgh, so it might be a good topic to dabble about.
Sounds interesting. Sounds really fun.
All right, great.
Hot topic.
Great. So that
wraps it up.
Yeah, that wraps up Transportation Talks, episode 1.